Welcome back to the Coach Nick Hilton Instagram. This is Training Talk 3. We're talking the 2020 Walt Disney World Marathon buildup. This marathon buildup was definitely unique in comparison to the other ones we've talked about so far, in that it was my lowest volume I've ever done going into a marathon, and I was actually coming off a little bit of a retirement in June 2019, which led to my lightest base period going into a marathon as well. So definitely kind of unique situations going into this. So let's get into it and kind of talk about how I approached it. So we're going to break this one into 3 segments like I did the last training talk. The first one's going to be the overview. The second one, we're going to talk about all the key workouts and sessions that I did going into the race. And number 3, we're going to talk about the race itself and how it unfolded. So the length of this build-up was 11 weeks, a little bit shorter than I would normally do. 12 is probably the shortest I would go. I usually like to go 12 to 16, but just based on the circumstances coming into this race, 11 was just what it turned out to be. As you can see, my mileage was a little bit lower across the board than what I had done for previous races. Coming off that little retirement in June of 2019, I had built up very slowly once I kind of got the bug to get back into running, and I was averaging closer to 60 to 70 miles a week for the month or so before starting the build-up itself. With not a lot of specificity in my workouts, so definitely not as prepared or as fit as I would be normally going into a marathon build-up, but that's okay. It kind of provided a unique opportunity to test this out and see how training would work, or see how a race would work with this type of volume and this type of build-up. I did race 3 times going into this one. The first race was the Phoenix 10K, where I ran just over 30 minutes. This was kind of a test race for me just to see where I was at fitness-wise and what I was working with and where I needed to go. I was really happy with how this race turned out. I ran a good bit faster than I was expecting, and that really portended well for what I was hoping to do over the next couple months to get ready for a marathon. I kind of knew where I was at, and now I knew where I needed to go to really get myself fit and ready to run at Disney. The other 2 races were half marathons I did as more of a training stimulus, so I'll talk about those in the key workouts segment of this talk. The last thing I want to talk about in this first segment are my focuses for this build-up. I really had 2 primary focuses outside of the normal training and the workouts. The first one was heat acclimation. I had raced the Disney World Marathon in 2018 and 2019. Obviously, we talked about 2018, and it was a really good year weather-wise, and I performed well. 2019, it was hot. It was in the high 60s to low 70s temperature, but with 90+% humidity. I was more fit than I was in 2018, but I didn't execute as well, and I didn't really take the heat into account as much as I should, and therefore I really cratered over the last 10K of that race and got second and didn't perform as well. So this year I really wanted to take that into account and be intentional about acclimating to the heat and being ready for that if it was going to be warm again in 2020, which it was. My other thing I wanted to focus on was training smart and maintaining a good life balance. I mentioned earlier that I had retired from the sport to some degree in 2019. That was towards the end of my period with Northern Arizona Elite. I was training at a really high level with them. The workouts were going well, things were going well, but I just was not able to put a race together. And I think it was due to a lot of chronic fatigue. I was still working full-time at that time. I was still coaching and trying to train at this level with really good, talented professional athletes. Just wasn't working for me, and that is in no way an indictment on the way Northern Arizona Elite trains. I had gotten really fit, I just couldn't put the other pieces together, and that's on me for not knowing how to balance my life with that training, or thinking that I could still train and work like I was 23 years old, which I wasn't at the time. So that was kind of the reason that caused me to take a little bit of a layoff from the sport. And in this build-up, which is my first serious race coming back off of that, I really wanted to make sure that I was sensitive to that. And I was hoping to go into the race a little bit undertrained, but ready to get the most out of myself, versus going in a little bit overtrained or trying to maximize things and shoot for the moon and ending up not being able to get the most out of myself because of fatigue and not handling my own personal situation well. So that's the overview for this build-up. I'm going to go ahead and reset the board here, and then we're going to talk about some key workouts and sessions going into this race. Alright, here we're back with Training Talk 3, and we're talking key sessions for my 2020 Walt Disney World Marathon build-up. So let's dig into these. I've got 5 sessions listed here. We're going to kind of go through these rapid fire. The first one I have was a 4-3-2-1 at marathon effort up here at Flagstaff. This is important because it kind of gave me a realistic view of where I was at. Normally going into a marathon buildup, I'd be able to run a lot of these paces at 5:20 and feel pretty comfortable. As you can see here, I was running a little bit slower than that early on, and I really wasn't able to accelerate as much as I normally would be able to over the second half. So it was a bit of a wake-up call and kind of let me know what I needed to do and where I was at and where I needed to go going forward. The second session here was week 3. This was the Gilbert Half. This is one of 2 races that I did as a training stimulus. The point with both of these was to go in and run the first half conservative, a marathon effort, and then come back and turn it around and run the last half hard. That's what I did here. I ran the first half around 5:25 pace. The second half I came back and ran closer to 5:10. I felt good about that. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but I felt good about the progress I was making and the ability to get fast enough to compete well at Disney. The next day I did come back and do a little fartlek, starting at 1 minute, building up to 5 minutes, back down to 1 minute, running around 5-minute pace, just to get used to running fast on tired legs. It just was kind of an exercise and running hard when you feel like crap. The next workout I have here is another race. This was the Scottsdale Half, about 4 weeks out from the race. Again, same execution as I was hoping to do it, as I did at Gilbert. Go out slow, come back hard, and I did that again, but this time it was just faster all across the board. I ended up running about 5:10 pace for my first 4 or 5 miles, came back and ran 4:58 pace average over the last 7-8 miles of the race. So I was really pumped about this one. This one gave me a lot of confidence, running close to 66 minutes based on where I was at a few weeks ago. It really felt good, and I felt like I was moving in the right direction. The next race I got here was, or the next workout, excuse me, was week 8. This was 3 weeks out from the race. I had originally planned to do my 15-mile steady state as I normally would, but I attempted that the day before this workout and it did not go well, so I just ran easy that day. I came back here and I was going to try it again. This time I decided to break it up a little bit and just get something in, so attack it from a different standpoint, try to do something that's a little bit easier mentally just so I could get the work in. I ended up doing 3 miles, 2 miles, 1 mile, 3 miles. With the 3-mile segments, both a marathon effort, I ran these at 5:17 pace, and the 2-mile and 1-mile segments at threshold effort, where I ran 5:06 pace for the 2 miles and 5:03 pace for the 1 mile, with an 800 jog in between. This was down in Phoenix, so it was a little bit warmer and it was sea level. I was happy about this one, A, just to get the work in after such a horrible day trying to get the 15-mile steady state in, and B, to feel comfortable at 5:17 pace and be able to accelerate down to low 5s and then settle back into that marathon effort over the last part of the workout. The last workout I got here is the 15-mile steady state. So I did this the week after this 3-2-1-3. I wanted to come back. I wanted to get it done. I knew that if I gave myself about 16 days before the race that I would be able to do it and still recover and be okay. So I went down to Camp Verde, which is a little bit of a lower altitude here than Phoenix. Flagstaff is 7,000 feet. Camp Verde is just under 4,000 feet. So you get more of that sea level style stimulus. My plan was just to go out and run my marathon effort, and I did, and ended up averaging 5:18 pace. I didn't feel great, but I got it in, and I was able to get my nutrition in, and I was happy to get that work done and have that in my legs. I knew it was going to give me confidence going into the race. I knew I'd be able to draw on that if I were having some low points at the marathon itself. So let's talk about another important thing here that I did with this build-up. Let's talk about the heat acclimation. I had done a lot of research. I was trying to figure out what was going to be the best way to do this. Flagstaff in winter, it is cold. It is not uncommon for it to be, under 15 degrees in the mornings. I didn't feel like just bundling up was going to get the job done when it came to that. So I decided on a treadmill steam room combination of heat acclimation. So I'd run in the treadmill and then immediately get into the steam room for about 10-15 minutes or so, just to really sweat it out, get used to being uncomfortable, and get used to running when I was hot. I also mixed in a good bit of Phoenix training in this build-up, so thank you to Trish and Steve Grothy, my in-laws, for putting up with us, practically every weekend in November and December as I was getting ready for this race. It was important for me to go down there and to run in that warmer weather, so I really appreciated that, and that was super helpful. I started the heat acclimation protocol about 3 weeks out from the race, so far enough out that if anything went wrong or if I was not responding well to it, that I would have some time to reboot and recover. The plan was, and I did 10 days in a row of some type of acclimation activity, whether it was treadmill running in steam room or down in Phoenix. And over the course of that 10 days, I could definitely feel the difference. It was really noticeable, particularly in the heart rate. And my heart rate was a little bit higher on the treadmill initially, running easy paces. Over the last couple of days of the acclimation period, it definitely was noticeably lower, and I was feeling better. After that initial 10-day phase, you don't have to be in the heat every day, but you do have to go in about every other day or every third day. So I was going on the treadmill every other day until we left for Disney. The race is on a Sunday in Disney. We got there on a Tuesday. So once we got there, I wasn't worried about it because it was already warm. So I was able to just run in the weather that was going to be happening for the race and stay acclimated, and it definitely made a difference. So we'll talk about the race itself here next. So I'm going to reset the board and we'll get going. Alright, we're back for part 3 of my training talk here, talking about the 2020 Walt Disney World Marathon. We're going to get into the race day details and talk about that stuff. It was a really fun day, one of my favorite race memories. I really love this race. I've done it 3 times, I've won it twice. All the people who are associated with it are fantastic. I've always enjoyed, working with the people here with the race. The crowds are always good. It's just a lot of fun. Obviously, you see I've got some stuff on from the race. I've got the ears, I've got the medal, all the things. Obviously my wife and I are really big Disney nerds, and this is just a great experience front to back. And we love the people, and we love the race, and we hope to keep doing it. So with that, let's get into the race day details. This one was on January 12th. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is pretty early. We had gotten up at 2:30 to be ready for the race. The weather that day was 73 degrees with 93% humidity, so it was toasty. You definitely feel the air was just stuffy. It was humid. I was sweating a ton. My whole uniform was soaked. Just a couple miles into the race, so it was definitely warm. I was glad I went through the heat acclimation protocol to get ready for it. I feel like that put me in a good spot. The shoes I wore were the Nike Vaporfly Next Percents, so I did wear the bouncy carbon plated shoes. I love the shoes. They're the best marathon races I've ever worn. They've always worked great for me. And then nutrition-wise, I used the Martin Gel 100 and the Martin Gel Calf 100. Discovering Martin was kind of like a revelation. I've always had stomach issues with gels. Just the sweetness and the consistency and the sugars never sat well with me. I've never ever had that issue with Martin. I'm always able to get them down. I'm always able to feel good on them. The Calf 100 is great because you get a ton of caffeine, so you really get that boost of energy. So I've really had good success with them. And then I also drank water and lemon lime Powerade on the course as well. So the race, played out, pretty much exactly how I would have wanted it to play out for the most part. We went out really slow and conservatively early on. A lot of 5:22 to 5:27s, even a couple 5:30s in there. I just wanted to really keep it reeled in over the first half of the race and be relaxed. I wanted to feel like I was running well under my potential, like I had a ton left. And that's kind of how it played out for the majority of the first half. I also wanted to be really focused on my nutrition strategy. I felt like that for this particular race with these conditions, it was going to be super important to get my hydration in, to get my gels in. And so I was just focused on running conservatively and nailing my nutrition plan early on. At about 10 miles, there was a small group of us still, but Fredison Costa, who was a 7-time winner of this race, who won it in 2019 as well, he had surged pretty hard. He dropped about a 5:10 mile and opened up about a 10-15 second gap on me at that point. I had to make a decision there. It was either go with it and see what happens, or hang back and try to make it up over the second half. I figure with the conditions, I know Fredison's a really good humidity runner. He had run 2:18 and change in similar conditions the year before. He lives in Orlando, so I knew he would be able to handle the conditions well, but I figured it was a little bit warmer today than it had been the previous year. I was confident that I would give myself a better chance to win the race if I hung back and tried to make a late push and see what happens. As fate would have it, he came back about 2 miles later, and he fell back and eventually ended up dropping out. And from about mile 12 on, I was really just on my own at the front of the race. And the whole time I'm just telling myself to keep it reined in. Obviously, whenever you take the lead in a race, it's exciting. You want to surge. You want to put in that extra burst of energy. I was just trying to tell myself to kind of restrain it, keep calm. The year previous, I had led up until about 24 miles, and I got past in that last mile and a half. I did not want that to happen again this year. I wanted to make sure I had plenty left in the tank over the last 10K, so I was just trying to pretty much hold my shit together as best I could over those middle miles. So that was what was going through my head. I didn't know what was going on behind me. I could kind of monitor around corners and see where things were, maybe pick up the walkie-talkie chatter from the lead biker, but really I had no idea. So I was just trying to execute as best I could at that point, run conservatively, and make sure I had enough left in the tank. And as fate would have it, I did. My last 2 miles of the race were 2 of my fastest miles of the race. I closed it in 5:16 and 5:15, and obviously it's fun winning a race. It was emotional. Winning at 18, losing at 19, and then coming back and winning again is a great feeling. And like I said, I just love this race. And the whole last, couple miles when I was pretty confident I had it in the bag, I was just having fun with the crowd, pumping people up, giving high fives, and just really, soaking in that experience. And I loved it, and I'm looking forward to hopefully going back and racing it again this year and having a similar experience. So that's Training Talk number 3. That's my talk for the 2020 Walt Disney World Marathon. I won't have any videos coming out next week. Sarah and I are going to be going away for a little while, so I will be on the road, so I won't be able to get anything posted with that, but I will have some posts coming up, so I'll talk about my training and some other things via just standard Instagram posts. The week after that, look for a double week in review and then another training talk. If you have any things you'd like to hear me talk about in the training talk segment, drop it in the comments. Let me know. I'm happy to get to those and talk about that stuff. So thanks for watching.